and welcome to the May 13th meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. This meeting is being held virtually via Zoom video conference. Please be patient. We'll do our best to be efficient and allow everyone to participate equitably. This meeting is also being broadcast and streamed online by FCTV in real time. As this meeting is being recorded by Zoom and broadcast by FCTV, please be cognizant of what you say, how you say it, what can be seen in your background. The chair recognizes the attendance of staff members, Jen, Kevin, and our recording secretary, Susan. The chair recognizes the attendance of commissioners, Russ, Maury, Steve, Kevin, Betsy, Peter, and Mark. And for the record, Kevin, you will be brought up as voting member tonight. To the commissioners, I'm just going to remind you, commenting, I'll call on each of you at the appropriate time, and all the votes are being done by roll call. So when I call your name, state your name and your vote. And then again, it's redundant, but I'm going to ask you to vote even if you're the one that made the motion or the second. To our public participants, there will be an opportunity for public comment for each hearing. If you would like to comment on a particular hearing, you may submit any comments or questions via the chat function once that hearing has been opened. At the appropriate time, I'll call for public comments and any submissions will be read into the record. The link and any further instructions are posted on the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Byrd has joined us.
Okay. Thank you. We have a full board. All right, first up is vote minutes for April 29th. I'm going to start with the executive session minutes.
Jamie, those have to be done in executive session, so we need to hold those. Okay.
To vote on the minutes?
Yes. So you're
okay.
Putting the regular hearing minutes from April 29th.
Okay.
All litigation is done with that project.
Okay.
Okay.
So we're going to ask for the, we're going to vote on the minutes of the regular meeting for April 29th. Anybody have anything?
I read the minutes and I found them to be correct. Hawks.
I'll second that. Gladfelter.
Okay, we have an motion and a second to accept the minutes of April 29th. We'll take the vote. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Byrd, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Mark?
Rooney, aye.
Maury?
Hello, Hawks, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Russ?
Robbins, aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Hey, Jen, do we have to do anything formal for the executive session to hold them?
Nope, you can just hold them.
Okay. All right. First up is requests for determination of applicability. First up, Greg Inman, 132 Wild Harbor Road, North Falmouth, Mass, for permission to construct an addition to an existing garage in the flood zone. Kevin?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Staff recommends a -2 under the state and bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Byrd, so move.
Hello, Hawks, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Anybody have any comments? All right, take the vote. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Byrd, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Mark?
Rooney, aye.
Maury?
Hello, Hawks, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Russ?
Robbins, aye.
Steve?
Byrd, aye.
All right, next up, Michael O'Brien, 331 Edgewater Drive West, East Falmouth, Mass, for permission to install a new septic system with a denitrification unit.
Yes,
Kevin?
Mr. Chairman. Staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Byrd, so move.
Gladfelter, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any comments? All right, I'll call for the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Gurney, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Aye.
All right. Next up, Jean M. Pagani and Abby B. Lammers, 30 Foster Road, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to construct and maintain an addition with a porch and steps within the flood zone. Kevin,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Gladfelter, second.
all right, we have a motion and a delayed second. Excellent. Any comments?
I was waiting for someone else to jump in.
Nah, just go for it. All right, we're gonna go for the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Gurney, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Aye.
Excellent. Next up, Mary Carnevale, trustee of the Acapesket Realty Trust, 448 Acapesket Road, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to install a Title V septic system to replace an existing failed cesspool. Kevin,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Carlo Hawks, aye. Second.
we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, we'll go for votes. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Gurney, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Aye.
All right. Next up, Clarence E. and Amy L. Korsgaard, 23 Dealey Lane, West Falmouth, Mass. For permission to completely renovate and upgrade the entire building, construct a second-story addition, upgrade the subsurface sewage disposal system, and to lightly grade the walkout access beneath the existing deck. Kevin? Or is Jen?
Yep, I got this one, Mr. Chairman. The applicant is requesting a continuance until June 3rd.
Carlo Hawks, so moved. And I hope they're looking at a D night.
Bird, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue us until June 3rd. We go for the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Gurney, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Aye.
All right. And next up, Patrick J. and Ann E. Hester, 7 Beckles Road, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to add lawn and ornamental shrubs to a previously landscaped area. Kevin?
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Carlo Hawks, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, call for the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Gurney, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Aye.
Unanimous. Next up, Ken and Laura Morse, 210 Quistit Ave, Woods Hole, Mass, for permission to install an osprey nest and platform. Kevin?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Carlo Hawk, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Mark?
Bernie, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Russ?
Robbins, aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Unanimous. Next up, Falmouth Conservation Commission, Surf Drive, map 47-02-025-000, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to install an osprey nest and platform.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Carlo Hawk, second.
All right, any discussion on this? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Mark?
Bernie, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Russ?
Robbins, aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Okay, that is unanimous. Bear with me 1 second.
Mr. Chairman, I believe you missed an RDA there. Come load
Yeah.
and drive.
That's what
Lot.
which one?
Come load and drive.
Did I go right over that? I
Yep.
apologize. All right. Next up, Cumloden Associates, Inc., 59-101, Cumloden Drive, 45 Cumloden Drive, 14 Damon Drive, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to conduct routine maintenance, including mowing the roadside vegetation to 2 feet from the road, repairing potholes, cleaning the surface drain on Cumloden Drive, removing debris from the road layout, and removing invasive vegetation encroaching on the roadway. Kevin?
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Carlo Hawk, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? And I'll call for the vote. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Mark?
Hey, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Russ?
Robbins, aye.
Steve?
Aye.
That's unanimous. Thank you for catching that, Kevin. Chair would like to recognize our esteemed select person. Sam Patterson is on board. Next up, requests for hearing under a notice of intent. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are held simultaneously under the authorities of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision of the commission is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. First up, Tom's already screen sharing.
Hi, Tom.
Hello.
All right, first up is Ahern Fine, 94 Little Island Road, West Falmouth, Mass, for permission to construct a 10x5 addition on the back of the garage, including roof line alterations and exterior stairway, and to install mitigation plantings. Mr. Bunker, you're up.
All right, thank you. For the record, my name is Tom Bunker, with BSS Design. We prepared this plan, and actually Jeff did a lot of the drawing here, but he couldn't make it tonight. But what I have on the screen is the aerial view of the area, just to give you an idea of where we are. 94 Little Island Road. It's one of
Excuse
the
me, Tom,
Yes.
all we see
Tom?
is,
Yes,
computer screen. No plan.
no plan?
No plan, Tom.
Okay. Am I sharing the wrong screen?
I think so.
Huh. Let me try that again. Got it. How's this?
Better.
Excellent.
Much better.
Better, okay. Okay, here we go. The aerial view of Little Island. There's 94 Little Island Road. Right in here, it's on the way out to Little Island. It was not, all the other Little Island houses are down this side. Just to give you an idea of that. I have the plan here, Little Island Road, running east-west. And there's a house. This is actually, this house is the first, it was the gatehouse for what was Little Island Road. Was kind of developed the same way the not Little Island Road, this area was developed the same way as Chappaquiddick Island was. As, started out with one or two and then more houses until it was finally subdivided into a road. This area here is there's a, this driveway coming in, and this is the gatehouse, and this stone wall. I mean, this is the original entrance up to further in where the main house and eventually other houses were built until the road was built around the other direction and bypassed this area. But then when the other road was built, this garage was put in that roadway. And it's been there for a while. And what we're proposing to do, I want to gain a little bit of space in the upper floor of the garage. So basically this this brown area is an addition. So in this one addition here on the ground floor is will be a bathroom addition, and then there's steps going up to a deck above the bathroom and then up to space on the second floor. This, let's see, in the calculations, here we go, covers 136 square feet. And I should point out that the bottom of this stairway, I just caught this today, the bottom of this stairway, the last 6 feet of it or so is actually a stone slab. It's not stairs all the way down, but it is still coverage. And so we're counting all of that as 136 square feet of coverage. And it is within the flood zone. It's within, certainly within 25, 50 feet of coastal banks. So it's a 3-to-1 mitigation ratio. And there's a wetland to the side, so it's just outside the A zone, but it's nonetheless in the B zone of the wetland, which is to the east. There are a lot of, due to the topography, there are a lot of coastal banks and wetlands and A and B zones, but basically we're in the A zone of coastal bank in this location. So it's a 3-to-1 mitigation ratio, and we have this mitigation shown down here in the lowest area, the closest available to the wetland. So we have 415 square feet of shrubs to go in that area. And that is our proposal. These steps and a deck up to the second floor and this mitigation planting. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Tom. Jen and or Kevin,
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Tom, quick
would you
question.
please, Tom?
What question?
Tom, I think Jamie would like you to stop sharing your plan first. There.
Okay.
Oh,
There we go.
thank you. Just a quick question, Tom. There's a little bit of shrub material behind that
Right.
shed, like where your proposed addition's going to be, and that's inside that limit of work. Is that remaining or is that being removed?
That's outside. I think there's, we hadn't counted, I hadn't thought much of it because it looks like it's honeysuckle. I think in my response to Alyssa, We've gone over the required mitigation planting by a small amount, but if you want to, we'd rather see that gone, and if you want a little bit more mitigation, we can, not mitigation, replacement, we can do that.
Okay, let's see what the board says. That's all, Mr. Chairman, unless Kevin has any additional comments.
I do not, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right. Comments? Betsy,
I have no comments. Thanks.
Courtney,
No comment.
Kevin,
No comments.
Mark,
I have no comments.
Maury.
The only question I had for Tom was, it's only about 7 feet between the limit of work. Are you gonna have like a mini excavator or something go in there to do the foundation?
It is, yeah, Jeff told me today, it's a mini excavator that'll be doing the work.
And then the next question is, I see you need to go in front of ZBA.
Correct.
For what?
It is an accessory building that's over 22 feet tall.
Thank you.
Jamie, may I just jump in? Tom, you have filed with ZBA, correct?
I have the paperwork in process. I'll probably file it tomorrow.
Okay, next time you have to file with ZBA, the wetlands regs do say that you should file, or you need to file with all departments, to file for all obtainable permits. So in the future, just quickly file with ZBA and get that paperwork filed for me, please.
Yes.
Will that require a continuance, Jen?
I don't think so, Mr. Chairman. This is such a small project. If Tom promises to file the paperwork tomorrow, and he's nodding.
Well, my wife is the architect and she wants it filed. So it will be.
Funny how that works.
Yeah,
All
And
right.
technically it should, but it's up to
it
the,
will be.
thank you, Tom.
Peter,
I just have a clarification question. There are no changes to the septic system and there are no bathrooms in the garage?
There are no, I think I'd have to look back when we did the septic upgrade, which is, way up the hill here. It was oversized. Taking this, there is a bathroom, but the second floor, I believe we counted that as a bedroom. So there's no change anticipated being needed for it.
Okay, thank you.
Russ,
No comment.
Steve.
No question. Thank you.
So Tom, for clarification, are you adding a bedroom up there?
It's not intended as a bedroom, but the health department might consider it a bedroom. It's a art studio, music room kind of thing, but it's because it's on the second floor and it has privacy, they'll consider it a bedroom, but it was already calculated in when we upgraded the septic system.
Gotcha. Thank you. All right, what's your pleasure? I'm sorry, hold that thought. Jen, public comments. Do we have any chat questions?
We do not.
Okay,
Carlo,
that-
make the motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Second.
all right, we have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion and there's no public comments, I'm gonna call for the vote. Betsy,
Gladfilter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Bernie, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Aye.
It is unanimous. The hearing is closed. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks.
Okay. Next up, Francis and Christina Ahern, 27 Fresh River Road and/or Lane, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to raise, RAZE, an existing single-family dwelling and to construct a new single-family dwelling, drive-under garage, porch with stairs, paved driveway, rent station, AC and generator units, with all associated grading, utilities, and landscaping, and to relocate town water and sewer lines. Jen, I'm sorry, yeah, Jen, who's up?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I just promoted Matt Costa up as a panelist, so he will be presenting the project.
Thank you. Matt, we're ready for you whenever you're ready.
You guys, me, I for some reason cannot see anybody.
No, Matt, we cannot see you.
You have your video on?
Yeah, it's going. I can hear you. I'm gonna try to share my screen. You see?
No.
I have no idea what's happening. Something's wrong here.
Nope, there you are. Hello, Matt.
There you go, Matt.
All right, how about the screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good evening, everyone. Matt Caustic, Islands Engineering, representing the applicant. We're here tonight under a notice of intent application to raise and rebuild the existing dwelling that's on the site. Just get this full size here. There we go. So we're on Fresh River off of Surf Drive. We're in an interior block of single family lots. We got Fresh River to the west. If you look on the locust map, we also have a BVW to the east. Plan shows the buffer zones to the BVW, A and B zone. We're out of the 200 foot outer riparian for the river. We are in land subject to coastal storm flowage. This is an A zone. Elevation 12 is the base flood elevation. This property is serviced by town sewer, so there's no system. Forward, gonna tear down the existing house and construct a new house in accordance with building code, flood zone construction standards. This is not a velocity zone. It will have appropriate flood panels on it, flood vents rather, and the structures elevated up above the flood zone to comply with all applicable standards. We do have a small reduction in area, so there's no trigger for mitigation on this. We have an outdoor shower that's shown on there, and a proposed rinse station. And we're doing trench drains instead of dry wells. We got some high groundwater over here we're dealing with. And that's really it in a nutshell. Project meets all the applicable performance standards, and we're respectfully requesting you issue an order of conditions. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Matt. Please stop sharing screens now. Jen and or Kevin? Jen, you there?
No, I don't have any questions, Mr. Chairman. Kevin?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, we'll open up for commissioner comments. Betsy,
I have no questions either. Thanks.
Courtney,
No questions.
Kevin,
No questions.
Mark,
No comments.
Maury,
No comments.
wow, Peter,
No questions.
Russ. Russ is missing. We'll come back to
Oh, oh,
Russ. We missed you.
Sorry about that.
Any comments on this one? Questions?
No comments, no questions.
Thank you. Steve?
No comments. Thank you.
All right.
I'll
Jen,
make
do we have-
Bird, I'll make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Carlo Hawk, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Jen, do we have any public comments?
It doesn't appear so, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So there's no public comments and no more commission comments. We'll go for the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Bernie, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It's unanimous. The hearing is closed. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Next up, Richard and Claudia Mackin, 12 Nichols Road, East Falmouth, Mass, for permission to replace an existing ramp with a 3-foot by 32-foot aluminum ramp and to install a connecting removable 4x7 timber platform on top of a coastal bank.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I just moved Mr. Borselli up as a panelist.
Thank you.
Sharing a screen.
Mike, we're ready when you are.
I'm trying to turn on my video now. Bear with me.
Now would be good.
There we go. How's that?
Good evening.
Good evening. And you can see my shared screen?
Yes, we can.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, for the record, my name is Michael Borselli. I represent the applicant Claudia and Richard Mackin, who own the property at 12 Nichols Road. 12 Nichols Road has frontage on Waquoit Bay. Waquoit Bay would be considered land under the ocean, land containing shellfish. There is a narrow coastal beach right along the edge of the existing bulkhead and seawall. There's an existing float system with a ramp that leads to the float system. More on that in a minute. Other wetland resources of note include a coastal bank along the bulkhead and seawall. We show the A and B zones from that. The property is also located in land subject to coastal storm flowage. The waterfront is considered DE 13 from this blue boundary seaward. Off to the south and west, I guess it would be, is an area of salt marsh. If I could for a minute, I'd like to, well, I guess I'll wait on the photos. The application before you tonight is relatively straightforward. It is seeking permission to allow the applicant to replace this small ramp that I'm trying to circle with the mouse that is the access to the licensed float system with a pre-manufactured longer aluminum ramp that'll connect to the float, but instead of landing on the coastal beach in the tidal zone, it would connect in the upland to a very small platform. That is depicted on this typical section. You can see a portion of the existing float, a new ramp, the existing timber bulkhead, and a connection to a small removable platform that measures 4 foot by 4 foot. Now, if I could, I'll show you why we're hoping to get permission to do that. This photo that I'm now sharing with you shows the current situation with the ramp that leads. This photo is taken standing on the float looking towards the upland, and you can see the end of the ramp landing on the coastal beach. The Mackins are in their retirement years, and it's getting more and more difficult to climb down the ladder and walk across to the ramp. I will share another photo with you. Here's a view looking north. You can see the float, you can see the ramp, you can see the relationship to the bulkhead. So basically they want to connect to a small platform that would occupy this area where this brick walkway is, and then connect down. In fact, if you look in the far background, you can see a similar ramp right here, if I'm zooming in enough for you. Right here. This in fact had a similar situation where it landed here, and you approved this ramp change. So basically that's the project. This platform is proposed to be removable. The new ramp will allow for public access under it. That's why we propose this removable platform, to get enough height. There's a minimum of 5 foot separation required, or clearance, for public access in accordance with Chapter 91 requirements. So there's a section that's 5 to 6 feet of clearance. It removes the ramp from land subject to, to land containing shellfish and land under the ocean. It opens this area up to public access. There was some comments from staff, and I had a conversation with Jen, and they have to do with the actual floats that exist today. There's a Chapter 91 license that licenses the float system and it describes in dimensions what the float system is licensed to be. There was a comment that we did not show the entire float system because it went off the sheet. I did provide the Chapter 91 license, so I apologize for not showing it on the sheet. But I can share another picture with you that shows it, and I'll describe the problem we have. This float system, the long section, not the T, is the right license dimensions, 6 by 48. This T was licensed to be 6 by 16, or 96 square feet. The license was issued in 1993. It was measured and determined that it is 6 by 24. So it is 8 feet too long. The owner was made aware of this, and he acquired the property in the mid-90s. It was licensed by the previous owner. He never even looked into the size of the floats, and he's willing to do whatever is necessary to make it meet the size on the license. So Jen and I had a conversation about that, and we would be more than receptive to a condition. What we're hoping you would consider is that we'd be allowed to modify it or get a new float if it can't be modified. That would be pre-manufactured and floated in to replace this one. What we're hoping you would consider is that we'd be allowed to make it have the required square footage maximum, which is 96 square feet, but not be 6 by 16, but instead be 4 by 24. That would give him more length to berth alongside on the T. It would be the same square footage. We could get a minor modification to the license for that. If you are not receptive to that, he'd be faced with just replacing that float with a 6 by 16 float. So we're hoping you can consider that in your review. And I think that sums up the application. And I can unshare my screen and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mike. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, a couple of questions for Mike. Mike, you used the example of Mr.
Mudari, yes.
Mudari's dock, but he had extra pipe supports for that. You don't show extra pipe supports for your new ramp coming off that seawall. So is it going to require additional piping to support that? No? Okay.
No, it's
Mr. Midori's, and he had that additional piping.
yes. You can buy a pre-manufactured ramp. There'd be no additional penetrations or supports. It would connect directly to the float and then to the bulkhead.
Okay, and as far as the modification to the float, Mr. Chairman, staff doesn't have any real reservations with that as long as it is in the appropriate square footage, the configuration. That really is going to be up to the board. The current dock out there, yes, is 6 by 48. It has the 2 6 by 24 foot floats instead of 3 6 by 16 foot floats. So it is slightly different than the Chapter 91, but the overall dimensions are the same for that pier section. It's just the T that's too large. I believe the ramp is even shorter than licensed, Mike.
Yeah, it might be.
It might be, yeah. Oh, and then just there were a number of correspondence that were forwarded to the board, some opposing the project and some supporting the project, and you were all provided that correspondence. Anything additional, Kevin?
No, that covers it.
Could I just interject one thing? I apologize. There was we discovered late, an opposition email was submitted to you that we obtained a copy of today. We replied to that through Kevin, and I'm hopeful that he shared our response to that opposition.
Mike, I did. The board did receive that.
Many of the comments in the concerned abutters email basically are addressed by what we're proposing, which is public access. We're improving public access. We're eliminating the ramp from being in the resource area. There was a Division of Marine Fisheries email, I believe staff was copied on, where they had no comments, which I would take to be no issues or concerns. There was several supporting neighbors that signed a letter in support.
Okay. Anything else, Mike?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right, we'll open up for comments. Betsy?
So I don't have a problem at all with this, but I'm just curious. Is this whole system taken out in the wintertime?
I believe it's seasonal and it's removed, but it has the ability to be removed seasonally. What I don't know if Mr. and Mrs. Mackin do remove it seasonally. I believe they do. I believe it's removed, and then Little River Boatyard, I believe it's coming back to me, services it, and Little River Boatyard is across Wacoit Bay in Little River in Mashpee, and I believe they install and remove seasonally.
Okay, well, the reason I'm asking is that you have a removable platform and a removable little ramp that goes up to it.
Yes.
So presumably there's a removable ramp that goes down. And I think given that it's in the velocity zone,
Yep.
Out of season, it really should come out.
That's definitely appropriate, and I would agree, and I think it is, but it could certainly be made a condition to make sure that happens.
Okay, that's sort of what I'm suggesting. Thanks, Mike.
Yep.
Courtney?
I have no comments and I agree with Betsy.
Okay. Kevin?
Generally, I would approve of the project, but as someone who is also in advancing years, I'd like to see, I would think the proponent would like to see some sort of a railing on this thing. It's one thing to be walking up a ramp a shorter distance, another thing to be 6 feet up and walking out to but that probably is, I don't know if that's within our jurisdiction or not.
I can speak to that, Mr. Chairman. That typical section is just to illustrate the connection. The new aluminum ramp will most definitely have a railing on it.
Oh,
Okay.
in that event, I'm fine with it.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just jump in on the seasonal question, the license plan does call it out to be a seasonal dock, so that will be a condition.
Okay. Mark?
I have no comments.
Maury?
I just had two comments. Make sure we put in the order, Jen, that it has public access signs as required by DEP, the Chapter 91 license, and there's none on it now. And the bayberry has been pruned, and just, maybe make a finding, no further pruning of the bayberry. And also, Mike, for you, the entire dock should have been on the plan.
Yeah, I understand.
It took me a while. I mean, I went out there and measured the dock off because it wasn't on the plan and realized it was larger. And I'm kind of out on the jury on it being bigger, only because a larger boat can be put on it. But I'm fine with. I'm glad that the public access is improved.
Yeah, point taken. I will make that. I will do that in the future.
Peter?
I have a comment. The grass was very green, and Falmouth has some regulations regarding fertilizer that close to the water. That's my comment.
Duly noted. Mike? Please,
Peter, we'll make sure that the reminder is in the order of conditions. Your standard conditions do remind applicants of that townwide bylaw.
Thank you.
All right. Russ?
And no comments or questions.
Steve?
No comments, and I don't care which configuration the T is.
Okay. Jen, what's your take on the T?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman?
What's your take on that? Should it be well, first of all, should it be altered at all? I mean, it should to comply, correct?
Correct. I do believe the T section does need to comply with the Chapter 91 license, so it does need to be 90, what did we say, Mike?
96
square feet. I I don't have any, as I said, reservations about the configuration. But if that's really up to the board.
Well, we stick to our 100 square foot, so I think if we didn't do it on this one, just let's be consistent,
Well, it's 96.
So the question is the configuration.
then I'm all, yeah.
So it would
Well,
either the
24
chapter
is
90,
like-
the chapter 91 license more calls for a 6x16 float. All the floats in the chapter 91, there were 4 6x16 floats, 3 going out to the T and one, and then the T section. What the Mackins have done is they replaced the 3 floats with 2 6x24 foot. So you still have the same length. And then obviously they bought the third float in that 6x24 configuration or size. And that just does not mesh with the chapter 91 license. So it's really up to the board whether or not you want to see the 6x16 or you would allow a 4x24.
But I get the feeling that the consensus is that it can be either way as long as it conforms to the 96 square feet. Would everyone agree with that, or am I
Yes.
the line?
Yes.
I agree.
Okay. So Mike, you got that?
Yes,
We want to
thank
be we want to be at the 96 square feet, but we're okay with the either 4x24 or 6x16.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further comments from the board? I'll entertain a motion.
Carlo Hawks makes a motion to close and take it under advisement.
I'll second Gladfelter.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Jen, do we have any public chat comments?
No, we do not, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. With no public comments and all the comments from the board addressed, I'm going to call for the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Bernie, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. The hearing is closed. Thank you, Mr. Borselli.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Next up,
1 second, Mr. Chairman. Mike, Mr. Borselli, if you could just mute and turn off your video. I can't seem to move you back down to an attendee, so I'm going to have IT do that for me, okay?
Will.
Okay. Oh, there you go.
all right.
Thank you, IT.
Next up, Les Chernakis, 69 Paola Drive, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to raise, RAZE, an existing single-family dwelling and to construct a new single-family dwelling, to upgrade to a Title V septic system, to install dry wells, a retaining wall, a rinse station, a wall and steps, and an elevated AC unit.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I've promoted Tom Bunker up to a panelist to present the project.
Okay. Mr. Bunker, you're up.
Yes, thank you. Let me share my screen. Do I have the right one up this time?
We see it.
Yep.
Okay, good. Thank you for the record. My name is Tom Bunker with BSS Design and represent Les Chernakis and Laura Tenney at 69 Paola Drive. As you can see here, fronts on Bourne's Pond, an existing house which was built around 1988. It's in the flood zone. I can bring up our plan of existing conditions. The entire property is in flood zone. Out here over Bourne's Pond and the salt marsh and some of the upland, it's the velocity zone, elevation 14. Of course, we have the 25-foot wide Falmouth velocity zone here. Then inland from the velocity zone, it's flood zone AE, elevation 12. The lot only gets up to slightly higher than 9, so you see it's entirely in the flood zone. The house is non-conforming as far as the floor elevation being only 11.4. It doesn't have flood vents and things like that. Bordering Bourne's Pond, there's this area of salt marsh, and from there it's lawn all the way up. There are a number of trees that you can see in that aerial photo. It's well treed and there's a good canopy over it, but we've been out there, no understory. So the house is, let's say, 63 feet at its closest to this deck from the salt marsh, 95 feet from the high water mark. The A zone of the salt marsh goes all the way inland here, encompasses almost all of the house. Along the seaward side of the house, there's a slight rise, which probably comes from the construction of the house as a coastal bank right here, steeper than 10-to-1, and a little more coastal bank going along the south side of the house. And so we have the A zones of the coastal bank, and way out here in Paola Drive, the zone B of the coastal bank. So all of the property is in that, most of it's in zone A, and what's not in zone A is in zone B. So it's 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 mitigation calculation. So on our proposed plan, house has gotten bigger, but it's not closer. You have this distance right here, so we're 64 feet in several locations, or at the same distance from the salt marsh as before. It's gotten wider. You can see the faint outline of the existing house, so it's gotten wider also, and it's gotten closer, bigger toward the street. So it's enlarged in all the directions. I don't have the numbers right here. It's gotten increase in coverage. Increase of coverage in the zone A is 493 square feet. Increase in zone B is 463 square feet. A total of 2,405 square feet of mitigation required. And so what we've done is planted the understory, almost entirely the velocity zone is now planted with native understory in these locations. And on this other plan, I think we show a number of trees to remove. They're tabulated here, including an umbrella pine. We have 115 diameter inches, basically along the south side. And there's the umbrella pine on the north side, cherry, and a cedar tree in the way, plus a couple oak and a pine on the seaward side. And also this oak tree that's near the retaining wall, by the neighbor's retaining wall. And so this, we will build a similar to the neighbor, a retaining wall across with steps similar to the neighbor's steps. This area on the south side will be filled up to 2 feet deep, up against the neighbor's retaining wall, and this is about where the oak tree, near where the oak tree came out. So we're putting a red maple in this location. Tried to kind of find some more or less sunny spots for some cedar trees through the site, and mixed in some tupelo trees in some of the larger areas. I think tupelo can do well enough in the under the cover somewhat of the oak trees, particularly if any of the oaks succumb to any of the diseases they have. So we have the entire velocity zone planted. We're not coming closer. In the narrative, we had a previous arrangement of these steps where it came down partway, had a landing and then went back. Those steps got closer to the resource area, but still was within the area where there had been a hot tub. But changed that. And the septic system is going up here in a conforming location. This is the project. The floor will be 3 feet higher than it was, so it conforms to the flood zone regulations. There's an AC unit out here. Any rinse station will be underneath the deck, and it can connect to one of these dry wells that here. The dry wells have to be in the back. For one, because that's the direction the water will flow downhill, but also have to be at least 25 feet septic system. So there are 4 dry wells lined up along the back of this house. And we have limit of work arranged here. Sufficient room to get around the house, but also to protect some of these trees that we could. That is our proposal. I will stop the sharing and take questions.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay.
Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Tom, thank you for addressing the stairs. Staff had raised that as soon as that was filed with us. So there was a revision. The board should be looking at the May 4th revision date. Tom, when we went out there, in your mitigation area, there's a lot of stuff. There's a kayak rack. There's a boat in the salt marsh. There's a little ring on wheels in the salt marsh. There's a fire pit that looks like it's in the mitigation area, and then another fire pit kind of on the edge of the marsh. All of that stuff is going to be removed from that mitigation area.
Yes, I sent the report.
Kayak rack cannot be relocated to the salt marsh.
Right.
And so the
If
boat
they want
has
it, I
to
told them.
salt marsh, that ramp, and the kayak rack cannot be relocated to the salt marsh when you have to move it to put your mitigation plantings in.
Yes. Yes, I sent your report to Mr. Chernovskis.
Okay.
He agreed.
And that also includes the fire pits cannot go in the salt marsh. Just for clarification.
Yes.
But thank you for addressing the staff's concerns on the steps. Kevin, anything to add?
I have nothing to add beyond that.
Thank you, Kevin. We're all set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Open up to commission comments. Betsy?
I have no questions, thanks.
Courtney?
No questions.
Kevin?
No questions, thank you.
Mark?
My only comment is I hope he doesn't build it according to the stakes that are out there, because the stakes that mark the landward side of the mitigation area were perhaps 15 feet closer to the water than they belonged. So we've got to make sure they put the stakes in the right place before they go do some construction or planning and mitigation. Along with that, I don't know what the plan is or what the need is to have some sort of way to get across the marshland. We've got a path going up to the edge of the marsh, and clearly people are going in and out with kayaks because there are a bunch of kayaks on the rack there. And what sort of plan do we have to get the kayaks across the marsh and into the water, or do we need a plan?
We have no particular plan. It's just a matter of, we always show that there's some access to the water. If you need some type of a plan, you talk about like a boardwalk across there. I mean, I don't know that would be allowed. For now, we have no plan.
Not either, but maybe, I don't know what. I don't know, maybe if Jen, you have suggestions, because it's clearly a thorough pass, a route that goes back and forth, and apparently from the use of the kayaks, it's kind of steadily used.
the only thing the staff would actually think of would be to be some sort of either boardwalk or removable kind of matting, but that removable mat would also smother the vegetation during the summer. So it's difficult, you know. You can
But
think about
perhaps
that.
if they put some of the grading down, which would support the weight of people but not smother the grasses.
You just place them on there in that pathway. That could be an idea, Tom.
We can talk with you after.
Okay.
I do want Tom to address the issue of the staking for the mitigation area. I mean, I could be wrong, but I tried to pace it out and place the trees. It looked like the stakes were nowhere near where the plot shows it to be.
Yeah, yeah, I'm not sure. I'd have to check that. I didn't see it after staking. I can take a look. I will take a look.
Thank you.
Maury?
I had a couple questions. You know, this project is doubling in size. There's no proof that I'm looking at the distances. Originally, the house, the closest is that hot tub and that patio. I'd like to see some aerials to see how legit and legal that was to begin with, because now we're allowing this entire project to be 65 feet because they're using that hot tub as their closest area. And as we all know, Jen's shaking her head.
No. I can say the hot tub is 57 feet.
Correct. But if
And we're not using the hot tub as anything at the moment. Right here we have a dimension. Principal structure is 63 feet to that corner of the deck, and the hot tub is 57 feet. And our house is 64 feet from, so we're actually a foot, 64, 60, so we're actually a foot further than the existing deck.
Okay.
I did call Tom to discuss that when we first got it, and I told them they could not use the patio or the hot tub as that present primary structure. It had to be the structure of the deck.
Okay.
And if you look where I'm looking at the existing plan right now, my other screen, and when I looked at it in the office, it looked like that they were going 63 feet off that corner of the deck near that patio and hot tub. It just blends in with that corner. See where I'm talking about?
Yeah. All right. So you already addressed that. All right.
Yes.
That's number one. Number two, we just saw an RDA at 331 Edgewater that put a D-night in. They volunteered to do it. From Bourne's Pond, this is a huge project, and there's no D. Just don't understand why we don't have a D-night, or you even recommended it. Maybe you did. I'm not sure, Tom, but I would recommend it to the owners because that's the only way these ponds are going to get cleaned up. Then I'd also like to say, I would like to know, I understand now that you're doing the elevation changes and the oak's going to be cut down, but a maple tree that you're planting is on the property line. It's within almost 10 feet of the existing structure, and that is not mitigation. We don't allow that. And to put all the cupolas in an existing oak grove, and you're saying that the gall wasps may be a reason, in case they die, I don't think you have enough room for the mitigation, or you've got to make more area for the mitigation, because sticking all those cupolas in that existing oak grove, and you can tell that all that area down below has been new lawn, the buffer's been cut. I really like the new mitigation, but you have to do that because you're doubling, you're going from 10.78% of the lot, and now it's 20.14% of the lot. So you have to do the mitigation, but the trees are stuck in with trees. It's like putting a forest in a forest.
Well, I think we should be able to, if we cut down a tree, we should be able to put a tree back relatively in the same location. You talk about that oak tree, putting a maple roughly where the oak tree used to be. As for the others, I mean, you're right. There's not much room on it. We we are doing more or less, I mean, what we may be permitted to do as far as the increase in the size of the building. And even though we're putting some trees, we're thickening. I mean, if you go out there, you see yes, it's an oak forest, but they're fairly far apart. Further apart than they would be, I think, if younger trees would have been allowed to grow, and we're just putting in younger trees that will take over when some of these trees reach maturity. I mean, I think it's valid.
Could we suggest a review with staff at the appropriate time? On placement?
Chairman.
I'm sorry to be the Debbie Downer, but they stick all the trees, they still have the lawn, the limit, they could move them closer to the limit of work. Tom just said
And that might be the reason, that might be the outcome, Maury. I mean, if that's what the board would like to see, we'll require them to be removed. I'm just looking up Google Earth right now.
Well, I know Tom says he took the oak tree down, he's gonna put a maple back. Well, that's not really how it always works. I think we'd put the maple tree in a more appropriate place if you're gonna take down a 20-inch, everybody, 20-inch oak tree. Probably the nicest tree on the whole lot. And now we're gonna get, what, a 2.5-inch caliper maple in its place?
Well, they all have to start small, and the only reason it's the nicest tree on the lot is because there's been nothing growing around it. I mean, all of these, the ones down there, if you get trees that are growing mixed with other trees, then they're not so good. I mean, it's nice that they get to grow with nothing else around it, but that's a result of development where you get nice trees. And, so I mean, it's kind of a mixed message, I think.
Well, I think you just gave me a mixed message because you said the reason they grew so well is because they were all in there all by themselves. And now you're sticking all the new plantings in a forest. So you just contradicted yourself.
No, but I'm putting a maple back all by itself where it can grow nicely.
Tom.
In nature, they grow more closely together the way we're doing it, is what I was saying. But we could talk with staff about the placement of the trees.
I'm all set. But I really am disappointed again that you have not recommended a D-night system in Bourne's Pond, which is totally atrophic. It is dying, and you're going to double the size of this house and no D-night. And if you didn't even recommend it to your client, I think you really should.
Well, the nitrogen comes from the number of bedrooms, and that's not being increased.
We're trying to improve the situation. So we're going to stay status quo and just keep degrading everything?
No, I understand.
Hold on.
Peter?
No questions or comments.
Russ?
No comment.
Steve?
No comment.
Ben, what's your take on the trees?
If the board would like them shuffled around, we can move them out of the mitigation area and into we'll go out there with Tom.
Sometimes they don't have enough room.
And that's what we're going to look at, Maury. We're going to stand where the stakes are and look up and see if they actually do have the room to grow.
Thank you.
Right, so that's something that can be worked between the applicant and staff.
That's if the board wants to allow that to be worked out between staff and the Tom. Or we can.
Maury?
Staff look at it before we close the hearing to see if it can happen, because we can't change it in our findings and our orders, as we all know through some projects we've had that have gone to court.
Let me see one thing, Mr. Chairman. Tom?
Yes.
Would you have time to meet me out there tomorrow or Monday?
Yes, I know I have time one of those days.
Okay, so why
I know I
don't
have
we,
Monday
if you,
and possibly tomorrow.
okay, so why don't we, if you would continue the hearing until next week? And you and I can go out there on Thursday or Monday to look at the placement of the trees.
Okay.
Work for you, Tom.
So be in touch tomorrow.
Will that be okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
that'll work.
And at that point, Mark, we can measure the mitigation area and check to make sure that mitigation area is appropriately staked in the field. Mark Gurney.
Mr. Chairman, I think we should have a continuance given all of this.
Well, that's what we're talking about. Ben, is
That's what we're talking
next
about,
week
Court.
gonna be? Is next week gonna be enough time?
I mean, it gives me one, it keeps it on, it keeps it moving. The hearing we have after that is June 3rd. You're not meeting on May 27th. So it really is up to the board. I mean, the stake field can be corrected to reflect the plan if the staking in the field, turns out to be a little off. And the trees, I think those are easily, I don't know, Tom, those can be easily shifted on and reflected. Yes, no?
Yes, if we meet no later than Monday, I can make changes to the tree locations before Wednesday.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
I can meet you, just Tom, touch base with me tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
I can meet tomorrow afternoon or any time on Monday right now. Okay,
Yeah, I'll check, yes.
okay, thank you.
okay, so with that in mind, we're gonna be looking for a motion for continuance to next week.
I'll make a motion to continue to May 20th.
Bird, second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to continue this till next week so that we get clarification on the tree locations and the
Mitigation staking.
mitigation size and location. Jen, do we have any public comments?
Let me check real quick. It doesn't appear so, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so if everybody's good with that, we have no public comments. Tom and Jen will work on addressing the tree location and the mitigation spacing. So with that, I'll call for the vote for continuance till next week. So Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Bernie, aye.
Maury,
Aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
All right, it is unanimous that the hearing is continued until next week. Thank you, Mr. Bunker.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
All right, good night.
Okay. Next up, Daniel and Carolyn Palmquist, 46 Rivers End Road and 58 East Harbor Drive, East Falmouth, Mass, for permission to install a fiber roll stabilization system to stabilize an actively eroding coastal bank and to conduct minor beach nourishment. And somebody's sharing screen. Mr.
Oh, sorry,
Borselli.
Mr. Chairman. I promoted Mr. Borselli up and Nick Crawford from Crawford Land Management to present.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sound check, everything okay? You can hear me and see me?
Yes,
Yes,
Thank
we
you.
see your plan.
And I'm sharing an aerial photo at the moment.
correct.
Okay, for the record, my name is Michael Borselli, Falmouth Engineering, and I represent the applicant. I'm joined tonight by Nick Crawford of Crawford Land Management. If there's specific questions for him, he's available. He would be the contractor who installs the fiber roll system. I started with an aerial photo to just give you a sense of where this is located. River's End is shown here. The lot is highlighted in yellow, number 46. We do have a co-applicant, which is the main reason for me showing you this. We have a co-applicant at number 58 East Harbor Drive. The reason he's a co-applicant, if you look at the unique configuration of these lots, Mr. Palmquist's property has a very limited frontage on Great Pond, and number 58 has more frontage. So the shoreline actually runs like this. So some of the erosion that we're concerned about is actually on the land owned by number 58. Now, we've submitted a letter indicating he's accepting that he be part of the application, and he is listed as a co-applicant and property owner. Mr. Palmquist is taking responsibility for the actual work. The erosion really impacts his property more dramatically than it does number 58. Now for the plan. Here's the site plan, and it shows the focus on number 46. You can see in a light gray shading surrounded by green lines, an area of erosion that runs along the shoreline on both adjacent properties. But the significant erosion we bracketed with this dark black dashed line, which is the area we're proposing to put the fiber roll system. The abutter to the south was consulted and met, and he elected not to participate. The erosion diminishes, ironically, right near the property line. There is erosion, but it's not as excessive as on the applicants in this portion of number 58. Just to give you a sense of it, if you haven't seen it, here's a photo looking towards number 58. In fact, if you look closely, number 58's house deck is at the very top of the photo. The erosion is fairly dramatic. You can see some trees have fallen, been uprooted, and additional trees are threatened. Here's the escarpment. One other photo to illustrate this more close. This is on the south side of the dock. You can see the similar thing. This is basically right where I'm circling is pretty much where the boundary with the property line with the neighbor to the south is. So the plan is to install a fiber roll array. We consulted with Crawford Land Management. They have installed and designed numerous projects like similar to this. So the details associated are shown on this typical cross section. There's a fiber roll array that will be 5 20-inch diameter rolls in an array, and there are tie anchors and high tenacity mesh to secure the system in the bank. It's been designed to basically fit the bank and go to the top of the erosion. For reference, I'm also showing mean high water. There is a very limited area for beach nourishment that would not go seaward of mean high water. So at the very toe, we're hopeful that you'll allow us to place some sand nourishment. That's identified in the narrative to be placed from the upland by sand chutes. The access is entirely from the driveway. We show a construction access through the property. The materials will be hand delivered down to this area. The sand would be delivered down these chutes and placed at the base of the fiber roll array after the fiber roll array is installed. I've also have a photo or two of the access to show you that the equipment that's necessary is a skid steer. Nick and I reviewed the site. This is the edge of the driveway, the cobblestone edge. So they'd make their way through here with the skid steer. There's one other photo. This is the area at the top of the bank. It's pretty open, so there's a ability to maneuver the skid steer, and any disturbance to the ground would be restored after the work is done, but the chutes would go, the coastal bank is to the right of the photo. I think that sums up the proposal. I know you're familiar with the fiber roll array systems. You've reviewed and approved these in the past. We obviously, I don't believe that a hard solution would be acceptable and appropriate here. And there really are limited options on how to stabilize this bank. So we think we're doing the best we can with limited options. And with that, we're both here to answer questions. Should I unshare my screen, Mr. Chairman?
Please, is Nick going to add anything or just to be available?
He's available for questions.
Okay. Yeah, please unshare.
Okay.
Hey, Jen and or Kevin?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mike, I don't have any concerns with the project, the concept of the project. It's that going below mean high water, that little bit. Is there any way to pull that back at all?
Actually,
Mike,
we designed it to be just above mean high water. If you look at the cross section, it's just above mean high water by design.
oh, okay, got it. Okay, all right. With all the little arrows in there, I'm like, where is mean high water?
Yeah.
And that's how I thought I read the plan at first, but then you just said, oh, we talked about that. I'm looking, I'm like, where does it say that in your notice? Okay, no, I mean, the bank does need to be stabilized, so I don't have any concerns, Mr. Chairman. Kevin Newton?
Mike or Nick, is there any plan to put any woody vegetation in there, or is it just a native seed mix that's going to be going in to augment the fiber rolls?
Nick Crawford here from Crawford Land Management. We would intend to just seed the fiber rolls right over the thin layer of nourishment that we placed there. So the nourishment will, through runoff and rain, kind of filter into the fiber rolls themselves. And ideally we get some germination on top of the fiber rolls within the nourishment. And then by the time the nourishment has rinsed down into the fiber rolls, those grasses will take and hold with their fibrous roots. So as of right now, we hadn't planned on putting any woody vegetation back because we're not planning on disturbing anything that isn't actively eroding. And planting woody vegetation into fiber rolls is most of the time a little difficult.
Thank you, Nick.
Yep.
Thank you, Nick. Kevin, anything else?
That's all I have.
All right. I'm going to open it up to comments. Betsy?
Yeah, so I have two comments. One is Jen heard from me yesterday because I went out there and I went to this, whatever this is, 46 first, and I didn't see any sign. So I said, well, I'll go to 58. So I went to 58 and walked around their house. And I saw what the project was going to be, but I'm not sure why why there wasn't a sign. I'm not sure if I was the only one who didn't find one. And the other question I had is, when I was at 58 and looked back at 46, where you said you're going to replace any vegetation that you disturb, that's a fairly bare area there. I mean, they're trees, it's well treed, but there's like zero understory.
Right. Well, what I meant by anything that we disturb via the construction access, and I don't mean by cutting or removing a vegetation, but the skid steer has a tendency to disrupt the ground surface, so it would just be reshaped and smoothed. There's no intention. The only area that we don't intend to disturb anything that isn't currently eroding. We just hope to restore the section that is actively eroding, or stabilize it, I should say, with the fiber roll. So we want to, no work will be done on, we'll stay off that coastal bank as much as possible for obvious reasons. The more we're on it, the more susceptible it is to further erosion. With regard to the sign, I think I forgot now that I'm thinking about it. I don't remember putting a sign. The sign would have been right next to the driveway, Betsy. So I didn't place a sign.
Yeah, and Nick Crawford here. As far as the any disturbance on the coastal bank, there shouldn't be any, because we would be using the chutes, which is basically a corrugated culvert cut in half. So it's kind of a half pipe, and that's what we would be shooting the sand down. So there would be no traversing the coastal bank itself, as all the materials will be carried down the staircase by hand. So I don't anticipate any ground disturbance other than potentially above the top of the coastal bank, where we're maneuvering the mini skid steer. It's a dingo, so it's only 4 feet wide.
Okay, but actually I'm not worried about what you're going to do on the coastal bank. I'm worried about the buffer to the coastal bank that looks completely bare. I mean, there are some trees there, but there's zero ground cover. And, that's an issue. In a heavy rain, the rain just is going to pour down that coastal bank. That's just going to, most of the erosion obviously is from storms. But
right. If it would make you, I could talk to the homeowners about, certainly we're going to seed any areas of soil disturbance from the skid steer itself, but I could definitely speak to them about seeding additional areas of just bare mineral soils to help stabilize the slope and the flat area above the coastal bank.
Yeah, the flat area is the buffer to the coastal bank.
Yeah, I could speak to them about seeding that area with the same native seed mix to get a vegetative ground cover.
Okay, thanks. Those are my questions.
Courtney?
No questions.
Kevin?
No questions.
Mark?
Yeah, well, I looked at that, a couple of things. I think probably the most interesting one was that there's no place to put any of these rolls at a 45-degree slope in back of the current ramp at the head of the stairs. If you recall, looking at it, the land comes down, it's about 6 feet high, and then it drops straight down to the various pilings that hold up that platform preceding the stairs. So I can't imagine what you're going to do. Are you going to dig back into the bank where that big tree is? There's a big oak, it looks like. You certainly can't take that out. So it seems to me the only way to get this in is to move out onto the beach and to remove that platform. So how are you going to do that? How are you going to fit everything in?
To be 100% honest, I haven't seen the site for probably a month and a half or so. So, certainly some additional erosion could have taken place since I've seen the site last, but the idea with the coir fibrils is to match as close to existing grade as we can to create the least amount of disturbance. So I guess to in all fairness, to answer your question, I don't know 100% based on current site conditions after some of the south winds that we've had, but I don't know 100% at the moment.
I think you're going to have to straighten this out, look at it a little more closely, because there is quite a bit of erosion, and I guess I don't agree. I don't think it's erosion from the top of the bank. It looks like it's from the water, even though it's not a very active area. Just the appearance of all those, the very abrupt bank, and can't cut into the bank and lay the rolls on the bank, because then you'll be knocking out roots of great big trees not very far up the bank.
I mean, when we install these fibrils, we do have about 20 inches of depth to play with, as that's the, I'm sorry, hang on one second. We do have about 20 inches of depth to play with the fibrils to lay them back, just because that's the depth of the fibrils. So if we make it meet flush with the existing topography that's there, we have to eat into the bank approximately 20 inches to get that fibril to lay down. If we don't eat in as far, the fibrils at the top of the installation will protrude out from the existing topography. So part of it ends up being kind of a field decision in splitting the difference between cutting and having the fibrils meet existing topography. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Mr. Chairman, if with your permission, I'd like to share the screen and I can try to make that a little clearer.
Please.
I'm going to focus on this cross section. At the time that we did the survey, if you look closely at the undisturbed part, you can see has this crosshatch pattern and there's a dashed line representing the ground surface. It actually projects out a little bit, and then it gets much steeper, and the erosion line, the existing grade, is right where I'm placing the mouse. So this is an illustration. As Nick said, he needs to fit this to the slope. So what may happen is this section here may be slightly different in other places along the shoreline. For instance, the toe may bump out a little bit and narrow the beach, still being above mean high water, so that we're not digging into the bank. Basically, these are flexible, fibrous rolls that have the ability to, fit and shape to the slope. So, it's hard to, this is just sort of a general depiction in one section of the idea. It is like a field adjustment as you go along, as Nick had indicated. Directly under the dock, I think that's the area you were saying you were most concerned about because it appeared to be the steepest. I believe you're making reference to right under the dock in this location. If we need to, we can continue the hearing, look at that a little closer, and maybe give you a specific construction methodology for that area if you're concerned about it. But it was generally designed. The point was to try to fit these fibrils to the slope as best we can, given really no other real alternatives to try to stop the erosion.
Exactly, and like Mike said, with the coir fibrils, they are figuratively and in the field they are literally flexible. So we can cut open the netting that the fibrils are made of and pull out extra coir to make it fit the bank so that we don't have to do additional cutting. So when it comes time to do the implementation and install it, we will so to speak, specifically contour the fibrils that are being installed to fit the existing grade there. just to expand on that.
Well,
And Mike, is it fair to say that the site conditions could potentially change between now and the time you start the project anyway?
Yeah, it's definitely not impossible. I mean, it's if we get if we get a few more storms with a wind from the south pushing up those rivers, then it's entirely possible. Yes.
Okay. Mark, anything else?
yes.
Okay.
I can understand you can do some manipulation with those rolls, but when I was out there, I took some pictures and I measured some things, and I don't see any way you can get them in without further encroaching on the beach. And I think it's appropriate that you have some of your engineering staff get out there and actually stake out where it's actually going to go, given the site conditions, because we're going to lose beach. And okay, but I think we ought to be all understanding how much we're going to lose. Fiber rolls often are shown at a nice 45-degree angle like this picture. And I hope the owner recognizes that therefore the rolls will be exposed, although the picture shows a little sand on them. The sand doesn't stay on them, it never does. And the rolls are going to deteriorate. So I hope the owner is aware of that.
Yeah, in all fairness, I think that if we had to make the decision at the time of installation on whether to lose beach or make the installation steeper, we would choose to make the installation of the coir fiber rolls steeper rather than try to protrude out further towards mean high water. So we would simply stack them at a steeper angle than the rest of the project if it called for it.
Yeah, so that's what many people end up doing, is making them steeper because they want to keep as much high ground available as possible, and they can't encroach on the beach. You recognize that nothing will grow on them then, because they'll always be washed clean.
If I could, Mr.
Rainwater,
Chairman,
much less any kind of water spray thrown up from the water itself. Anyhow, I'm just sort of concerned because it looks to me like you're going to be running right into mean high water and maybe beyond that if you do this at anywhere near a 45-degree angle.
Well, we always start the installation obviously on the bottom roll, so we can ensure that the first fiber roll is installed above mean high water and always work up from there. So we won't be, so to speak, stealing or taking up any more beach space. I guess that's all I can say at the moment. I mean, I'd have to go see the conditions as they are right now, as you viewed them.
I think that's a good idea. I recognize it often is the case. I don't know where these topo maps or plots come from, but they often don't represent the true topology at the shore, often when the bank is steep. In this case, they're nowhere, and this shows almost maybe a 45-degree slope. It's not that gentle. It's much steeper right at the end. Of course, with erosion, as you know, and probably things have changed since this map was created, but I'm not really very happy with it. I think we're going to have it's going to be a funny looking project. You're going to be stacking these rolls like bricks, one right on top of another, in order to line up with the bank, not go onto the beach, and not cut out the roots of that huge oak and other trees that are right near the bank.
Well, I think the only other option than stacking them steeper would be to begin cutting the top of the bank to lay it down for a more gradual slope. And I don't think that anyone wants to do that. I don't want to do that. So the idea is to kind of stabilize what's there and maintain it as long as possible, so that we don't have to start cutting the top of the bank and changing the existing topography on a much larger level.
I completely agree with you. Can't cut the top of the bank. I mean, the trees are sort of hanging right at the edge of the bank. There's several oaks right there, and they would disappear if you cut into their root system any more than the water already has. And with that in mind, I'd sort of at least like to see it staked recently, so you could say, here's where I think it's really going to go based on my engineering judgment. So we get an idea of how much, well, where it's going to be. I was gonna say how much it's going to approach on the beach. I think it is going to, but I don't know any other way to do it either, so I just
Okay.
what you're gonna end up doing.
It's gonna be a field decision anyway. You don't know that isn't gonna be another. They could go out and stake it today, and this weekend we could have a storm. They're gonna have to put these fiber rolls based on what the configuration is when they're
At that
putting them
time,
in.
I understand that, but right now, from my observations, there's no way that they can make a project look like this drawing. So we don't have a drawing that represents it. Even recognizing it's a field decision, I'm not talking about 6 inches here or there. I'm talking about 5 or 8 feet out onto the beach.
Mr. Chairman, if I could speak,
please.
with all due respect, I disagree with Mr. Gurns. There may be an area that we're not aware of directly under the dock. If you make reference to I'm not saying this is going to be easy, and the cross section is an illustration, but if you look at the contours and where section AA is, the contours are spaced out a little bit more on the north side of the dock than they are at the dock and under the dock. So yes, I would grant you that it might be steeper there, but if it's information you need, we could attempt to stake and create what we call like a batter board, or like stake with strings where we expect the outer face to be. But the reality of the situation is, are you suggesting a different solution? Because the reality to us is we put the owner on notice that this is the best soft solution option we can come up with. So we basically have 3 real options: do nothing, which will result in continuing erosion, try the fiber roll array and do our best to secure it and manage it and maintain it. Or if that were not successful, we would be back to you, probably asking you to consider a sheet piling vertical wall with tiebacks. But my experience with the commission is a hard structure is a last resort. And I could probably demonstrate the house has been here since prior to '78, but the permitting is extremely difficult. And I think that there'd be resistance from other commissioners to try to do a hard solution here. So we were trying to do the best we can in a different health situation. Unless you have other solutions, we're very open to what you may have.
Mr. Borselli, I completely concur that this fiber roll is the best solution for this fairly inactive shoreline. I just recognize that the bank is actually steeper than shown on this plan, to my mind, to my observation. And I think we all want to see that these fiber rolls, from my observation, again, will probably have to extend either into the stairs, or in order to get a 45-degree slope, where you have to put them way steeper than 45 degrees, and maybe that's okay, but I'd like to have some engineering say, yeah, well, the only way we can fit it in is to put them at 60 degrees, and we as, waterfront engineers recognize that will work given appropriate tiebacks and whatever. But I think the current little sketch there of what the cross-section of what you would like it to be doesn't apply for a fair amount of this shore without extending quite a bit out. And I'd sort of like to see how far you're going to really have to go, or at least see an engineering drawing, if not actually staked on the field.
Well,
Thank you, Mark. Maury?
Maury, you just muted yourself.
Am I muted
You're
now?
there.
We can hear you.
Okay. I have to concur with Betsy. The staking was a little rough. And I went down and I did find it. And the same with Mark, it was really not well staked in the field as well. That being said, I think the soft stabilization is the best way we can go. I think your approach is good. I think that the steepness of the bank is definitely pretty extreme. And I also am concerned that to get the repose of those quarry logs, that you are going to have to cut into that bank with what vegetation is there, and you're not showing pretty much any removal of any vegetation. The big oak by the stairway will have substantial impact if you build it as designed. So I do think you're going to have to do designing in the field. It happens. You can't do it without it. But my one big question is the ECB, the erosion control blanket. It says it goes up 8 feet according to the scale. And if you're going up 8 more feet from the top of those core logs, there is a lot of vegetation up there. And I'm just concerned how you're doing that. Like, is there a reason for that, or can you not do that?
Yeah, and Nick Crawford here in the field when we do the installation. So I think it's just a so to speak typical detail. So we will only use the erosion control blankets approximately 12 inches above any area of disturbance so that we can stake the erosion control blankets into something substantial and some consolidated soil. So I think that saying that the erosion control blankets will extend 8 feet above the fibril installation as a whole isn't quite true. It's just that anything above the fibrils will be restabilized with the erosion control blankets when the fibril installation is completed.
What I'm going to say to you, Nick, is then it's not standard. These are very unique projects. So don't standardize in your drawings. Or at least put a footnote that says will be adjusted in the field as needed. Because we read these and we go out there, and that's why I'm asking this question. And I understand if you don't have to do it, that's wonderful. The other question is the beach nourishment. I walked on both sides of that, and there really wasn't much beach there. Everybody else on either side had salt marsh that is unfortunately having a stress moment and collapsing. So the beach, I'm not really sure it's a beach. It's more of a salt marsh that's been, eroded. And my question is, 80 cubic yards. I mean, it doesn't sound like much, 80 yards, of sand. That's roughly about 4 10-wheelers. And you're only going the base of that core log is only about 2 feet, like 20 inches from the base of it to where you're not going to get into mean high water. So I just hope that you're erring on the side of, more sand that's needed, but you don't use that much. And I think the Amorphola will definitely hold everything. And I do have to go with Mark as far as that underneath that stairway is very, very steep. Actually it's not even shown on the plan that it's got a bulkhead there already. The plan doesn't even show the stairway down, which I don't even know if that's permitted. But I think, Mike, you need to stake it a little bit better in the field. And other than that, I'd like to go back out after it's staked to see how the top of the core log and the erosion control blanket roughly are going to land on that bank. But I think you're in the right direction, and I like what you're doing.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
could I briefly share the screen one more time to show you a photo? And we're happy to continue and do what you're asking if that's going to help you make a decision.
Okay. Your first question, yes, please go ahead and share.
All right, thank you.
Discuss the continuance in a second.
All right, am I sharing a photo now?
Yep.
All right, so if you look at this is the north side. These stairs, I don't know why these stairs weren't shown. These stairs were required, Maury, by Chapter 91 for public access, and I assumed, I don't have an answer why they weren't shown on my plan, but I can add them. The dock was designed by another firm, and there was an as-built of it, and for whatever reason, the stairs aren't shown on my plan. But the reason I wanted to show you the photo was this slope with this tree at the very base. The mean high water, if you can see the red arrow, is right here. So we have That's actually slightly higher than mean high water. Mean high water is a mathematical calculation. So like over a series of tides, the average mean high water is somewhere in here. So there's a very narrow strip. So there's not really a beach. And there probably was a salt marsh. But the reason I'm showing this photo is because if you look at this slope is 1-to-1 or flatter, which is a 45-degree angle or slightly flatter on the north side. If you place the fiber roll array, just the base of it just above mean high water and slope it at the 1-to-1, I'm fairly certain it would fit in this area. It could even be laid slightly, perhaps laid slightly flatter. But on the other side, which I would show you on another photo, which I don't have as much information, but I think Commissioner Gurney's concern. This is the dock, and this is almost vertical. This is probably slightly better than vertical, but again, mean high water is where I'm drawing the arrow. So we have the ability to place the fiber roll array just above mean high water and try to fit it or slope it so there'd be a void behind it that could be backfilled with some of that sand to create the bed to accept the fiber rolls. So the amount of beach nourishment, I think I probably overestimated it. I wanted to not underestimate it. It's probably less than the 80 cubic yards. But of course, we can't nourish seaward of mean high water. We don't intend to. So it's more about what we have to just try to place a little sand at the toe and try to get some of the vegetation to grow, to stabilize it. So I just wanted to show that I think we have the ability here. In fact, it might not even be 5 rolls high here. But with all that said, we could set up some stakes and try to illustrate with some strings what the slope would be or something like that. If it helps you make the decision. If that's what the board wants, we can ask for a continuance. If the board doesn't need that, then we could close and hopefully get the work done sooner to limit how much more erosion occurs.
Well, let's see where the rest of the commenting goes, and then we'll figure out a continuance of closing. You good, Mike?
Yes, thanks.
Okay. Peter?
My comment is that the sooner it gets done, the less damage to the environment. And if the drawing shows 45 degrees or 65 degrees, it's varying according to the exact location of the shore. So I would prefer to get it done sooner rather than later with just more documentation.
Thank you. Russ?
He just said it all. I agree with him 100%.
Thank you. Steve?
Yeah, I enjoyed everyone's comments, but there's nothing left to say.
Thank you. All right, so I don't know. My feeling is that, you know, it's a call that has to be made on site at that time. But I'll listen to what anybody has to say. If somebody wants to make a motion or.
I'm going to make a motion to close the hearing, but I also would like to say that if there's a call on the field that they feel is extreme, that they inform staff before they move forward.
We can make that.
I would even further that to say we can meet staff on site and do the stakes for them to verify what we're doing and make sure they're on board with it.
I like that idea myself.
Okay.
So the staff was going to recommend that, you know, on these types of projects, we always kind of do a pre-construction. So we'll do a pre-construction, we'll have them stake mean high water, we'll have them stake everything, we'll go out and we'll make sure.
All right, with that, I'll make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Bird second.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to close the hearing and take it under advisement. Jen, do we have any public comments? Please.
Doesn't appear so, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay. If there are no more comments or questions, I'm going to call for the vote to close the hearing. All right. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Renee, aye.
Maury,
Fellow Hawks, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Aye.
Okay, it is unanimous. The hearing is closed. Thank you, Mike. Thank you,
Thank
Nick.
you. Have a good
Yeah.
evening. Thank you.
Have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That is it for NOIs. Next up, our continued request to extend the existing order conditions. First up is James McLaughlin, Town of Falmouth, Bournes Pond Bridge Replacement, Falmouth, Mass, DEP 254278, requesting a 3-year extension.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I've promoted Mr. McLaughlin up to a panelist. If the board has any questions, some of you indicated you did have a question for Mr. McLaughlin a few weeks ago, so we continued the hearing, this request till then. And basically the town is asking for a 3-year extension on the bridge replacement project at Minot. I'm sorry, yeah, Minot.
Okay. Jim, do you want to start, or do you want me to just go for comments?
Sure, I'll just briefly speak for a moment, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. James McLaughlin, Town Engineer. And as Jennifer mentioned, we're requesting a 3-year extension to the order of conditions that was issued in June of 2017. The order was appealed, and there's also a superseding order issued by DEP that was issued back in January of 2018. However, the 2017 order that was appealed initially did not proceed as far as the local bylaw appeal. There was some filing made, but then it appears to have been dropped. So that particular order is the one that we're requesting an extension on. As I'm sure most or all of the commission knows, we're also going forward with a beach nourishment project for Minot Beach that we'd like to have completed in terms of the permitting before starting work on the bridge replacement project. And the intent of that is to have the beach stabilized and not have the roadway itself at risk from future erosion over the life of the project. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jim. All right, I'm going to poll you for any comments. Betsy?
Yeah, so Jim, when this first came, Courtney was the one who asked about, was sea level rise being taken into consideration? And I realized that this is a kind of a water quality project, but since we had this a few years ago, we have a new committee that Jamie's on, Coastal Resiliency Action Committee. I'm just wondering if there's any coordination between that committee and the Water Quality Committee to consider what's happening in this area?
Well, as far as the bridge goes, there's not a proposal to modify that. And I think initially or early on, there were some concerns regarding the height of the low chord of the bridge, and the thought was to maintain it at its current elevation or close to it. And there are a number of reasons for that. One had to do with navigation, but also raising it, of course, would add cost for the roadway being raised, would alter the access to the parking lot, both parking lots, and also alter the parking lots themselves, and to some degree, the dunes on the ocean side, as well as alter some of the resource areas on the Bourne's Pond side. So for all those reasons, I think the initial design was to maintain basically the same bridge profile as currently exists there. The work that's being proposed, and shortly we'll be submitting a notice of intent for the Minot Beach work, the nourishment work. That does include provisions for rise in sea level. And I believe it's in the order of magnitude of a couple of feet that Clyde Coastal is considering for their notice of intent. And on that aspect of the project, we did file, or Applied Coastal filed an expanded ENF to MIPA, and just this probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, MIPA has issued a decision not requiring a full EIR, and basically that to the extent that the information's been developed to date, they were satisfied with it, recognizing that there's obviously additional permitting to be done.
So, do you have the Chapter 85 permit for this yet?
Yes.
And
all the permits for the bridge are in hand. The last one was from the Army Corps of Engineers and the Coast Guard within the past 9 months or so.
And DOT doesn't have a problem with the fact that this is not taking into account sea level rise?
No, it's fully permitted.
Okay, thanks.
Courtney?
I still have a lot of concerns about this because of the issues that Betsy's raised. This whole road is, this is a very dynamic area, and I hate to see us build a bridge that's obsolete. So I have real concerns about it, and I'm not sure how I can be allayed with those concerns unless somebody can convince me that we don't have any more sea level rise.
All right. Kevin?
I think I would go along with the previous 2 comments.
Okay. Mark?
Nothing new. Thank you.
Maury?
No comment.
Peter?
No comment.
Russ?
No comment.
Steve?
Comment.
All right. The request
Chairman,
is,
I have one quick question. Jim, when does it exactly expire? Was it?
The local order, the order of conditions was issued June 23rd, 2017.
Okay. Thank you.
anything else? I'll entertain a motion. The request is a 3-year extension.
Well, I'll make a motion to have a 3-year extension on this project.
Second, Steve Patton.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to extend this for 3 years. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, no.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Mark?
Bernie, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Russ?
Robbins, aye.
Steve?
Patton, aye.
Okay, it is 8-1. It passes. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you,
Thank you very
Jim.
much.
Good night, Jim.
Thank you. Good night.
Next up is Andreas and Joan Spolaris, 78 Squibnocket Drive, East Falmouth, Mass, DEP 25-4277, requesting a one-year extension.
Mr. Chairman, did you want to table this so you can address both Squibnocket agenda items as one?
I think that's the practical thing to do.
Okay, that's what you talked about before the hearing. So make a motion to table, and then we'll deal with the other two agenda items and then go back to this
I'll
one.
make a motion to table this
Second.
one.
Carlo Hawk, second.
Okay, so the motion is to table this for the enforcement order. Actually, is that an enforcement order?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right, Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Maury,
Hawk, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
Okay, so this one is tabled. Next up, our request to extend the existing order of conditions. This is a standard request, that is. First up is Carrie R. and George L. Figueredo, 55 and 57 Gunning Point Road, Falmouth, Mass, DEP 25-4272, requesting a one-year extension.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this was partially a restoration project. All the plantings are in. They would like a one-year extension to continue to try to address the honeysuckle. So we would recommend a one-year extension.
Carlo
Okay.
Hawk makes recommendation for 1 year.
Gladfelter, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to grant a one-year extension. Anybody have any comments? All right, I'll call for the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawk's aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. The extension is, the request is approved. Next up is Salt Pond Bird Sanctuaries, Inc., and Quistit Harbor House Land Trust, Inc., 48 and 71 Quistit Harbor Road, Falmouth, Mass, DEP number 25-4280, requesting a 2-year extension.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is the big management plan that is out there that addresses a number of different issues and elements of the knob. And I think it's appropriate to issue them a 2-year extension.
Carlo
Right.
Hawk,
So moved.
All right, Maury, I had you as the motion. Courtney
Well-
as a second. All right. We have a motion and a second. There's no comments. I'm going to call for the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawk's aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. The 2-year extension is granted. Next up, hearings under enforcement order. First up, before I get there, Jen, should we untable one and open them both, if you will, simultaneously?
That's what you wanted to do, Mr. Chairman, yes.
Okay. So, just so everybody knows, we have a request for an extension and an enforcement order on the same property. So I thought it was appropriate that we open them both simultaneously. But because I just think it'd be easy to go back and forth with discussion. But we will be taking separate votes, just to be clear.
I'll make
So
a motion to untable 78 Squibnocket.
Second,
Thank you.
Gladfelter.
Okay. Okay, the motion and the second is to untable. So Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Pat, aye.
Okay. So to be clear, I'm gonna read them both. Andreas and Jones Polaris, 78 Squibnocket Drive, East Falmouth, Mass, DEP number 25-4277. They're requesting a 1-year extension. Simultaneously, Andreas and Jones Polaris, 78 Squibnocket Road, East Falmouth, Mass, violations of approved order of conditions / settlement agreement, DEP 253466. Jen, why don't you start?
Mr. Chairman, I've promoted Arlene Wilson from A.M. Wilson Associates and Brian Wall up as panelists to address the board. I'll start with the 1-year extension for DEP number 4277. At this time, the staff cannot recommend that the board grant a 1-year extension on this project. The reason is there has been an alteration to the plan, which resulted in, I'm going to try to share the screen for 1 second. Do you, oops.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's coming up. There it is.
Trying to like move it around here. So if you see this, this was the retaining wall.
All right, we don't see that picture anymore.
Oh, sorry. You know why? Because I moved it to my second screen. Sorry. Hang on. Apologize for that. Can you see it now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. So the reason being is this was the can you see the arrow? This was the edge of the proposed driveway where there was a retaining wall proposed right here. All of the conditions from the previous, so this property, let's go back. This property has a very long history. Was issued an order of conditions. DEP number, I think 3466. That was subject to a settlement agreement where no alterations to the plan of reference could be done. That expired. The applicant came back to finish a portion of the project, mainly like the front area and the driveway. Those original conditions were incorporated into that new order. And I met out there several times actually on both sides of the property where they were having difficulty, contractors were having difficulty stabilizing that slope. Kind of knew that with the way the drawing was going to be. But the orders of conditions stated that the slope needed to be stabilized with vegetation. They could not achieve that. So they built this additional section of retaining wall and filled the coastal bank area right here. If you give me 1 moment, I can show you sorry, trying to move things around. The original plan for this project. And that area is shown right here. If you can see my cursor moving, that was that original retaining wall. This little area, you can see my cursor. Can you? Yes?
Yes.
Yeah, that is the door. And that door is, where was that picture I had? Sorry, I just have to move things around. That door is right here. So also I'm going to stop sharing the screen. In addition, the hay bale line is, decomposing in the wetland area, in the buffer zone. We were made aware of this because we were asked to issue a certificate of compliance back in, I think, late August, early September of last year. We reached out to the applicant's representatives at that time and told them what the issues were and asked them to address those issues. And we were met with silence for 8 months until this extension request came up, or until basically the staff was made aware that the applicant was seeking an occupancy permit without first obtaining a certificate of compliance from the building department. So at that point, we started to talk to council and decided that since we weren't really getting any feedback or any response to the certificate of compliance, that we would, which was on this one, that we would issue the enforcement order. When we advertised the enforcement hearing, which that you simultaneously opened, we then received the request for the extension. So that's where we are. That is why the staff feels at this time we cannot recommend the extension based on the order of conditions, based on the site plan. So that's where we are with that request.
And to be clear, these are two different DEP numbers.
They're two different DEP numbers. That was a glitch on the staff's part. They should have been advertised. The enforcement hearing should have been advertised DEP numbers. So both, I'm sorry, I'm looking for it on the hearing, both the 3466 and the one the request for 4277, they are the same plan. They are the same conditions. It's just the first one expired before they had the ability to finish the project. Nobody asked for the extension. Project couldn't go forward. You couldn't ask for extension on a project that the order had expired. The project needed to be stabilized. So the board issued an order of conditions to complete the project in 2017.
Okay.
And that's what I have. And I think I covered both that and the enforcement hearing at the same time. But we can go back to that if you'd like.
Okay. Does Mr. Wall or Ms. Wilson have anything they'd like to say before we go to comments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would like to.
Arlene, could you turn your mic up just a little bit for us, please, if you can?
Try. My IT person is helping me tonight. Is that better?
A little bit.
I'll try and speak up. Arlene Wilson, A.M. Wilson Associates, here for the Spolarises. Was here for, there we go.
Thank you.
The reason that we've asked for an extension is that we understand that there is work that is going to need to be done here. Some remedial work for sure. And we thought that it probably would be best to have an open order of conditions under which to do that work. I am new to this. I've been trying to catch up. It is a long and complicated history, as Jennifer suggested. There have been quite a number of various deviations over the course of the history of this project. What my goal is to try and make sure that when we come to an accommodation about what actually needs to be done, there aren't any more deviations. This is a difficult lot. The some of the violations, I think, may be some misunderstandings. The issue about the hay bale line, I have a letter from the previous consultant that said her understanding after a meeting at the site with staff was that the hay bale line was supposed to be left and allowed to deteriorate in place. Certainly, if staff would like, and I wasn't there, I have no idea. But it's about halfway deteriorated. Certainly, if the staff would like it taken out, that's an easy enough thing to do. I've talked to the client representative about it, and they're prepared to do that. There are some fairly large stone slabs that are in the area of questionable fill at the side door. My understanding is that the mason thought he was doing the clients a favor by putting those in. Clearly, that's not the case, and we're also prepared to take those out. I had provided sort of an overlay plan that I think is in your file. I don't know if the commissioners have copies, but what it shows is that in spite of the plan deviations, the hardscape that's on the site now, and I've included the driveway in that calculation of hardscape, because even though it's a gravel driveway, those things pack down to the point where nothing percolates through them in any event. We're actually 186 square feet less impervious surface as built than what was authorized, even though it's a deviation from plan. Should they have asked? They absolutely should. But they didn't, and we're here. My understanding also is that the authorized plan showed the big row of cedars down the north property line and a row of shrubs across the back that was, I believe, to mark the permanent work limit. In addition to those, after the violation notice was issued, or the notice that you couldn't issue a certificate 8 months ago, however long that was, there was some extensive shrub planting done on the bank. I'm told as many as 250 individual plants. Believe me, I haven't counted them. But there are a lot there. I've been out to look. And so, as I mentioned to Jennifer earlier today, my intention would be to apply, and we'll do that in short order, for an additional amendment to cure some of the problems, but request that we be allowed to keep that additional retaining wall. We would plant up the area of fill, probably as a butterfly garden, but if the board would prefer, it could certainly be dense shrubs. So again, the extension is to ensure that there will be an open permit under which we can do this work, and then to allow some further discussions with staff and probably a site visit to go over what's been done and what needs to be done as quickly as we can manage that.
Mr. Chairman, may I? Thank you, Arlene. First, whether or not the board decides to not grant the extension, the board, and I've said this before, you voted not to grant an extension on a prior order of conditions a few weeks ago. The order would still be in effect because of the governor's declaration of emergency and the legislation that was passed because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and all permits are extended until 45 days after the end of the declaration of emergency. And to clarify to the board, it has nothing to do with the May 18th possibly phased reopening of businesses. It has to do with the declaration of emergency by the governor. And these orders of conditions, all orders of conditions, both state and local, are extended till 45 days after the governor declares the emergency over. We don't know when that's going to be. So it is, and it does, and is afforded that kind of built-in extension anyway. So there's that. Second, Arlene, you said you have a statement from the former contractor. Is that a written statement?
It was an email that was sent to project.
I would like to see that email, because I don't think this board or anybody that's known me in my 15-year career with the town of Falmouth will I would ever say allow the hay bale line to disintegrate in place.
It sounded unusual to me, Jen. But, and as I say,
So forgive me for laughing. It kind of took me by surprise, because that's just something I would never say.
All right. You know, I think it's immaterial because you want them out. I understand why you want them out. We're happy to take them out.
Yes.
So that's, you know, that will.
And just to follow up, if the board wanted anything done with this property, if you wanted anything removed, you could always do that under an enforcement order. So you don't need the open order to order something removed. So that, I believe, are all the staff's comments regarding both the issues. I have more pictures I can share, Arlene, if you wanted me to share that colored plan you provided. Let's see, that's still, excuse me. Give me 1 second. So if you can see this, this is the plan that Ms. Wilson had provided the staff. It is basically, there's the staircase, the walkway. You can see how it is a bit different. This is over the certificate of compliance request plan, and you can see the additional wall right there and how it extends down that bank.
What's shown in orange is the wall and the walkway as they were authorized under the most current order of conditions. The dark lines, black lines are what's actually built. So you can see that the driveway is actually a couple of feet landward of where it was authorized. The walkway to the front door is more geometric and narrower. But the curved wall is a piece that was not authorized at all.
Arlene, let me just ask you a quick question. You're saying that this orange part,
that's on the permit.
that's, what was that again?
what's in orange is
Yes.
from the permit plan. So that's
Okay.
authorized by the commission.
1 second, please.
Mhm.
So that goes like that.
So you can see in this one, it's wider and it's got a lot of jigs and jogs in it.
Mm-hmm. It just doesn't seem to match up with the doorway or the landing very well.
What's
Okay.
yeah, what's striped in orange there?
Oh, I can go back. Sorry.
Okay. The permit plan showed what I believe was a stone dust landing. What's there now is a stone slab. So
Right there.
right, that's right.
It didn't really show a stone dust or anything. It showed a little box.
Jen, can you put the picture back up, please?
Yes.
And may I ask a question?
Hold on.
Uh-oh, wait. Oops. Hang on.
Yeah. That just shows the relationship to the wall better.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
There's some other views I can, that's on the other side of the property. On the other side. Again, the other side of the property, you can see the hay bale line on here with the silt fence still there. That is the wall. That is your agent Kevin standing at the base of the wall looking up. So you can kind of get an idea. You all know how tall Kevin is, of kind of how big this wall actually is. It's pretty substantial.
And did you say they tried
again
that first?
What was that?
Did you say they tried vegetating that side first, or was it the other side?
I met out there multiple times on issues on both slopes. The opposite slope, I think at one point the septic was breaking through after they built it. Russell can actually help me out with that. I think that was a big problem on that side of the slope. And then I met on this side of the slope and basically said that the order of conditions said the slope had to be stabilized with vegetation. They were well aware of that.
Okay. All right, let's see, let's hear some comments. Betsy?
Okay, so first I have a question. So that little box that shows on the plan, were we ever aware that there was a door that went out to that little box?
I would imagine you would have been. Hang on for a second.
I'm just wondering if that door was added.
No, that looks like a door, Betsy. That looks like some sort of landing. Can you see this plan?
No.
Okay. What did I do? Oh, sorry.
There you go.
I apologize for that. Here's that little box. Here, over here, it says air conditioner condenser. You would have had to have, if you have the front door, you would have had to have a secondary means of egress. Am I correct, Jamie, Russell,
Yeah.
Courtney? Yeah.
Is that a building code?
That was it. And it's a walkout. So that wouldn't have been your secondary egress. You would have had to have that on that main floor. Correct, gentlemen?
Yes. So that square would have represented a step.
Yeah.
So presumably that, whatever it was, we don't know. Right now it's a slab. It's sort
But
of,
it's a slab with that big stone wall comes out like this.
no, I know, but there isn't supposed to be a stone wall there,
Correct.
right? So it's a slab that would just, you'd have to have a railing to keep people from falling down that slope correctly.
Yeah.
Correct?
Just to correct myself, Arlene is right. It says landing with stone dust and pavers right there. Sorry about that, Arlene.
Okay. So is that correct? Do I
What
have?
was that, Betsy?
So if you walked out that landing, presumably there would be a railing that would keep you from dropping into the slope.
Or vegetation.
That would be
You know, that slope, that's a pretty steep slope. That's what the issue is.
we raised that, I believe, at the hearing, and we were told that it could be done. And that, a railing is a building code issue, I'm assuming.
Correct.
I just want to get it clear. So there was going to be a little porch there with a little landing with a railing, and then you were supposed to look down to a vegetated slope. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's what we permitted.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to clarify that. And I have one other question. It's a procedural question. If, and I can't remember the name of the woman who where's your name? Ms. Wilson.
Arlene.
Yeah, Arlene's made a comment that they could do everything they had to do under an amendment if the permit was still valid.
Correct.
So my question is, why couldn't an amendment be put in now? And we know there's at least 45 days. Well, 45 days after the end of the emergency, and we don't know, Massachusetts doesn't seem to be getting out of this emergency very quickly. So I don't understand why there needs to be an extension when there could be an amendment right now. And wait a second, I'm not done yet. And the amendment could include whatever we decide when we have a discussion about the enforcement order. And now I'm done.
I would like to make a comment that, sorry, can I make a comment, Jamie?
Sure.
I am not inclined to do anything for an extension on any of this permit, and I'm waiting in bated breath to get to the enforcement. This project has been a difficult one. That wall, it's not as if it was a little paver. That is a serious mortared, engineered wall. It probably didn't even get a permit because it's over 4 feet and it had to be engineered.
It did not get a building permit.
So if the history of this project, I am not going to vote for an extension. I know that they will have the luxury of the COVID to have an extension through that. But I would prefer to have no extension and to issue an enforcement properly on what we want done as the enforcement. Have the work done under the enforcement, because obviously the work on this project has not been done according to plan for a long time.
Okay. Courtney?
I'm very disturbed about this thing. This thing has dragged on and on and on, and these folks have pushed the envelope over and over again. I am not in favor of an extension. I'm in favor of an enforcement order that gets that wall the hell out of there. And if I sound like the resident curmudgeon, I am. Because this is ridiculous. So, I have no sympathy for this. They push the envelope, no permit on that retaining wall. That's a huge thing. Like, get it the hell out of there. And if they need to have an egress out of that door, which shows on the plan, and Jen, if you want to put that back up there and zoom in on it, it shows like a 4x4 platform. That's what we permitted.
Correct.
So I'm not, yeah, zoom in on that, down, if you can get way in on that plan where that little square is.
And all the box drains that are in the driveway, all open end over the coastal bank.
Yeah, this other stuff.
And there are no blueberry bushes.
So that's it. You know, I'm sick to death of seeing this thing over and over and over again. These people have got time; they can make it a priority and get the work done before the state of emergency and the 45-day period is done. No extension in my mind. I'll vote against that absolutely, and I'll vote for an enforcement order that gets that wall, that circular or semicircular retaining wall out, and whatever else needs to be corrected.
Okay. Kevin.
I think I'll keep quiet for now. Thank you.
Not man. Mark.
I have no comments.
Thank you. Peter.
No comments.
Russ.
I'm good.
And Steve.
No comment.
I'm going to make a motion to deny the, oh,
Yep. That's okay. Go ahead.
we actually have to make a positive motion, correct?
Yes.
Yes, Maury.
And I make a motion to allow the year extension.
I'll second that.
Okay, so the motion on the table is to grant the 1-year extension. So we have a motion and a second. So I'm going to take the vote. And again, it's a positive motion. Betsy?
Gladfelter, no.
Courtney?
Bird, no.
Matthews, no. Kevin?
O'Brien, no.
Mark?
Ernie, no.
Maury?
Carlo Hawks, no.
Peter?
Walsh, no.
Russ?
Robbins, no.
Steve?
No.
Okay, it is unanimous. The extension is denied.
And just to remind the board, the permit is still in effect until 45 days after the declaration of the emergency is over, just to be clear. So that
Right,
it's
the
still
request-
considered a valid permit under the state and the bylaw.
Yes, but the request before us was denied.
Correct.
Okay. All right, now the enforcement order.
So the enforcement order was for the original permit, which essentially is this same plan. So I've talked to council, and what we're going to have to do is just re-advertise the enforcement hearing to include both DEP numbers to make the record very clean. So what we are going to do is probably continue the enforcement hearing until June 3rd, so that we can advertise both. That's what I'm recommending, to continue it to June 3rd, so we can properly advertise both the 3, 4, 6. Hang on, Mr. Chairman, I'm also watching some flying insect in my room here. 3, 4, 6, 6, and then advertise the DEP number 4272 simultaneously. But we can begin to have a discussion on it, because it essentially is the same plan and same order of conditions.
Okay.
Basically, the second, the 4272 was to construct the driveway and walkway and everything like that with that retaining wall, the original one.
Right.
Okay, do you want that continuance motion on the table? And then
You can
we'll-
have a discussion first and then, vote to continue it like you would normally do.
Okay. Betsy, you want to comment? Question?
Yeah, I don't think the wall should be there. And the fact that it doesn't have a building permit makes me even more concerned that that wall is there, because I know what can happen when you put a wall like that and have saturated soil behind it. So, yeah, I think that should go.
And no rail system. Okay. Courtney?
Wall should go.
Okay. Kevin?
You can start on that. They don't have to wait. They can get it going.
They will. Kevin?
I don't need to add to the comments. Thank you.
Okay. Mark?
Me neither.
Maury?
Betsy.
Peter?
No comments.
Russ?
No comments.
Steve?
No comments.
Okay, so I think what we're looking for is a motion to continue until 6/3, so it can be
Yes.
advertised properly, and then we will vote on this enforcement.
Yes, I'll make,
Correct.
I'll make,
Also, the staff would like to add that the mitigation shrubs do need to go in, and that hay bale line does need to
come out.
come out. And just one other thing, and these were pictures that we took. Hang on one second, please. I'm just trying to manipulate two screens here. There is a tremendous amount of, oh shoot. Hang on. I'm going to share the screen real quick. Both slopes were supposed to be stabilized with vegetation. Yes, this is vegetation, but this is, pokeweed. It's not very deep-rooted system. This is not vegetated, but it's very shallow rooted material. So they should look at both slopes to make sure those are properly stabilized. I mean, it's not just the wall. I'm going to stop sharing this because still looking for the flying insect. But it's both slopes, the hay bale line, the required plantings, the wall. So there's a lot that needs to go into that discussion on the 3rd or your vote on the 3rd.
Okay.
Okay.
I had one quick comment, Jen. When you said the limit of work had to be removed, if their order is still open and they decide to do work there, should they
That hay bale line is ineffective right now. It's basically been there since 2008 or 10, whenever the order was originally.
Right, I get it, but if they're gonna do work there, then they should
reestablish it.
Okay, that's what I was getting
They
at.
need to reestablish it. It's basically disintegrated. Were you out there, Maura? You saw it.
Yes,
Yeah.
it doesn't even exist.
Yeah.
Jen, would you mind having staff enumerate all these issues
Yes, we can do that.
for clarity?
Correct. For
is
the
this
3rd,
like-
yes, we will have that done.
Thank you.
Make a motion to continue to June 3rd.
Second.
So
Jen, do you know if the building is occupied?
there's no occupancy permit on it yet. No.
Yeah, but is the building occupied?
It is not.
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second to continue until June 3rd. I'm going to take the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelder, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Maury,
Hawks, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. The enforcement order is continued until 6/3. Thank you, Eileen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Arlene. Thank you, Brian.
All right. Bear with me, please. Okay. Next up, again, hearing under enforcement order, Tyler Fazzino, 77 Antone Road. I believe that's Antone Ave, just to be clear. Falmouth, Mass. Alteration to isolated land subject to flooding, CMR 10.57. Potential vernal pool, FWR 10.58. And freshwater wetland, FWR 10.55. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have promoted Attorney Stenopoulos up as a panelist. I believe he'll be representing the property owners at 77 Anton Ave.
Okay.
The staff was made aware that there was work being done on Anton Ave. So just for some background, these photos were taken of, so there is a wetland between 77 Anton Ave and 54 Ashton Ave, which is the street, the other street. There is a small isolated wetland area, and it is does have vernal pool species in it currently. When we went out there, Mark Kasperzik and I, a few weeks ago, there were egg masses, there were spermatophores. So there are indications that it is potentially be a certifiable vernal pool system. Vernal pools, along with salt marshes, are one of your most protected resource areas. We know Mark loves his pictures, so this picture actually says Anton Ave from 2003. I think we had this. Hang on, I lost it again.
You're not sharing.
No, I know. I'm just. Oh no. Can the board still hear me? Oh, there you are.
Yep.
Hang on 1 second. The photo is not coming up for some reason. Oh, great. Come on, computer. Okay. So, Mark had, excuse me. I need to shut some pictures down first. I apologize to the board. Okay. This is a 2003 photo that Mark Kasperzik took. Apparently while he was out there sometime, that kind of shows the backside of 77 Anton Ave, just to give you some context. I'm going to stop sharing that one for a second. We went out there on April 2nd of this year. I'm just trying to find a other photo. So we went out on April 2nd of this year. And we had received multiple calls about work being done, and this is what we discovered on the site. Can the board see that?
Yes.
Okay. Another photo of that area. And for some reason, it's not letting me just scroll through the pictures I wanted to. So I keep having to open another one. But I think the board after this that's at the edge of the shed, gets the idea of the work that has been done to the back of that site and that wetland area. Right here, you can see the wetland edge. We do think there was fill either moved around on site or brought into the site, being pushed into that wetland area. So we instructed the property owner and their representatives to kind of begin a process to find somebody to delineate that wetland edge, which is not going to be easy at this point because there is no vegetation. It's going to have to all be done by soils. There was some earthwork done, so there has been movement of soils. It's going to make it that much more difficult to find that wetland edge, the historical wetland edge on that. There is a plan that was done by Tom Bunker back in 2011. I'll share that with you real quick. That kind of shows this was done for obviously a plot plan. As you can see, it's focusing on the dimension, the setbacks from the property lines to the foundation. It's not really, it didn't really delineate kind of that wetland edge in accordance with DEP's wetland delineation manual. It's just kind of drawn on the plan. So that's where we are. I believe the applicant and or their representatives have begun to contact some consultants and firms to assist them with this. This is going to be a restoration plan. I was asked on the site if there would be a monetary fine, and my response was the goal of the staff in any enforcement case like this is basically our focus and our goal is to repair the damage to the wetland resource areas as opposed to be concentrating on a fine. So we would like to see the wetland area restored. I know they are expecting a young family. They do want to have some backyard space. We can look in the aerials and see where that was kind of done before this work was done. But there was a buffer to that vernal pool prior to this work, and the staff would like to see that buffer returned. And that's all the staff has right now.
Okay. All right, let's go for some comments.
Do you want to hear from the applicant's representative, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
Attorney Stephanopoulos, I apologize if I butchered your name. Feel free to address the board, sir.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
We can. Could you turn your mic up just a tad, sir, if you don't mind?
If I know how to.
Nope, you're doing a good job.
I don't, let me see, maybe this doesn't.
Let's speak loudly.
Speak up.
How about now?
Perfect.
Okay, I just spoke more loudly.
We're all getting used to this, sir.
I think what Jen said is an accurate representation of the facts. So we're just looking for some instruction as to how we should proceed.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, to follow up on that statement, the staff did say, you know, the beginning stages is really we need to find where that wetland edge is. And again, it's going to be a little bit more difficult than normal because of the work that was done and the disturbance. Once that edge is established, that historic wetland edge, then they can work with you know, staff or a consultant to come up with an appropriate buffer restoration plan for that area. But really, that the key is to find that wetland edge first.
On that note, I would suggest talking to Tom Bunker. I realize his plan wasn't for that purpose, but if he has the wetlands outlined, he may have some waypoints that he could go by.
Correct.
Thinking out loud, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's not his responsibility, but he may be able to help in that regard.
He told me that he still had some CAD files, so that he may be able to help us do that.
Exactly.
That would be a logical choice because he does have those files in his system, and it wouldn't require possibly like a whole new survey of that property boundary. So that would be helpful.
Right. Jim, anything else at the moment?
I reached out to a couple of experts in the area of replanting. They haven't gotten back to me yet. Names that were suggested by Mr. Bunker and by Jen. So as soon as they get back to me, I would assume within the next day or so, I'll be able to put together something, restoration plan.
Okay. Let me open up the comments and then we'll proceed from there. Betsy?
So my only comment is, yes, it needs to be restored.
Courtney?
So I think clearly from the way this discussion is going, first step is to get somebody in there to delineate the edge of that wetland. And we should put a timeline on that, and then a timeline for establishing a restoration plan, and then a timeline for doing the work and having it completed. So that would be, that's my only comment. I don't think we need to, I think we just move forward on it.
Kevin?
No comments at this time.
Okay. Mark?
I don't have any further issues.
Okay. Maury?
Maury?
The comment.
Oh, okay.
Peter?
No comment at this time.
Russ?
I'm good. I agree with Betsy and Gordon.
Steve?
Yeah, I agree with them too.
Okay. So, what kind of motion do we want, Jen?
I mean, you can, what kind of, I mean, you could close the hearing and vote the enforcement order at your next hearing and discuss what kind of benchmarks you want to put in place for certain, you know, I would suggest they have to retain some assistance by this date, you know, that wetland, you know, they need to, you know, delineate that wetland, meet with staff by this date, and just keep marching forward. So, I mean, that can be discussed when you discuss issuing an enforcement order. This is the hearing. So like any hearing, if you've kind of done with your discussion, you don't have any additional questions for the applicant or the applicant's representative, you know how you want to proceed, then I would say close the hearing. We'll vote the enforcement order at your next hearing. then we can, the applicant can
We'll come up with a plan.
continue to move forward. And I have always suggested when I meet with someone on an issue like this, that they really kind of start that process right away. Don't wait for us to schedule the hearing. Don't just start that process, because it shows good faith to the board. And I think, they've reached out to Tom. They've reached out to some different restoration firms. So I can just say you can close the hearing and vote the enforcement order next week.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to close the hearing and close the hearing.
Close the hearing, take it under advisement.
Under advisement.
Carlo Hawk, second.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to close the hearing. I'm going to take the vote. Are there any further comments? Is there anything in the public chat, Jen,
Let me check.
please?
Nope, there is nothing. So just for the applicant's representative, sir, what's going to happen is the board's going to close their discussion. They don't really have any additional questions. You've been instructed to restore the area. So next week they'll kind of vote the nuts and bolts of that decision, giving you clear timelines and deadlines, and basically what they're going to want to see on a restoration plan, what kind of site plan they're going to want to see, and what kind of restoration they're going to want for that area. So that's what they'll be discussing during their deliberation next week. So once this hearing is closed, they can't really take any additional public comments. So if there's anything else you'd like to say to the board, this is the time to do that.
So there'll be no more hearing for me to appear at until I receive your enforcement order.
Correct. And like I said, basically they'll vote timelines, what they're going to want to see on a plan. The plan is going to look a little bit different than Tom Bunker's plan he did for the mortgage plan. We're going to want to see a lot more detail on that plan.
Makes
So we're
sense.
going to want to see topography, existing topography, if he could find original topography, upland edge, the vegetation on site. And please ask your clients to, cease and desist any work on the property until that enforcement order is issued.
That's as clear as a bell.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right, I'm going to take the vote to close the hearing. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye, and one comment. You have our permission to get a firm to get in there to delineate that wetland.
Makes sense.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
Oh, O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Pat, aye.
Unanimous. The hearing is closed. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You as well.
Good night.
Okay, bye.
Next up, vote order conditions. First up, Alan Willis, 72 Eel River Road, East Falmouth, Mass.
This was, hang on one second, if you don't mind. This was to address Kevin Newton, help me out, some outstanding planting issues.
There was also a root
compliance.
barrier perhaps around the knotweed if it's not actually removed.
Yes.
We're talking about Willow,
We're talking Eel River.
Eel River. So this is the one where there's a bunch of beach grass that the board wanted to be left in place.
Correct. There were a number of issues. They're going to move the shed, move the utilities, correct, Kevin?
Exactly.
Yeah, and then replant some areas. One of the areas was an area of very established beach grass that staff had recommended to be removed and replanted in accordance with the original planting plan. And I think the board's discussion at the hearing was that maybe interplanting that with not so many shrubs, but with more salt tolerant shrubs and leaving that beach grass area in place would be the most appropriate way forward for that small area.
Correct.
Okay.
You guys talked about bayberry 4 foot on center.
The only thing was, Jen, I think that Mark had viburnum, but we had discussed that it'd probably be beach plum or bayberry.
Something a little bit more salt tolerant, correct. The only area, Kevin, do you have the plan right in front of you? I can grab it.
Yeah, I do not have it.
All right, hang on. Threw it somewhere. Oh, right here. We could locate the shed, revise the tree species, add note. So yeah, there were some proposed tupelos. An area of a couple of proposed tupelos. Remove spot areas with invasives within the buffer by hand. And then the area of the beach grass. And of course, and to replant the bare areas that were shown in yellow on your plan. If you like, I can bring that plan back up for you with additional plantings. So we'll just go with everything that was on the plan. The only change the board wanted to see was the bayberry 4 feet on center in the beach grass area instead of removing it and planting it with viburnum and clethra, I believe they had. Yes.
And
So
wasn't
I think
it
that was the
something
only
about-
change to the proposed plan.
Was there something about a 3-year monitoring period?
Yes. There should be a monitoring period on this to ensure. You can do a monitoring period with one monitoring report per year for the life of the permit. Also, the planting should be planted immediately and not over the space of 3 years. And I do believe we discussed that during the hearing, is that this should be done immediately.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to accept as discussed. Gladfelter.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept as discussed. Any further comments? All right. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Mark?
Ernie, aye.
Maury?
Fox eye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Russ?
Robbins, aye.
Steve?
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. Thank you. Next up, Michael C. and Ann L. Feenan, 101 Lake Lehman Road, Falmouth, Mass. This is an addition. Right?
This is the one we talked about, knotweed.
Right. Now we can say that.
Right.
There you go, Mark. Now's your chance. Not weed.
Right, not weed. Get it out of there or bury it or something. That's barrier it.
I believe there's the board wanted there to be a condition of a root barrier.
Right, so talk to me about the knotweed again.
I think he's gonna try to remove it and put a root barrier because it's in his neighbor's yard too.
Oh, yeah, on that side of the property, yeah.
But it's on the other side of the property as well, which is town. land.
But we're doing it on the southern neighbor's side, correct? Not
Correct. The northern, where it is in the northern side is town land. People are gonna have to address sooner or later.
Right.
Well, the town should address that.
Mhm.
That's what I mean. The town should address it. We also talked about, and I think Tom said maybe he'd do mechanical removal of the ivy. Because the ivy's gonna get up in the trees.
Mhm.
I know we mentioned English ivy.
The patch over by the knotweed.
North or south knotweed, Betsy?
It's north of the knotweed.
Okay.
It's at the base of trees. It's the
Okay,
bane of
yeah.
my existence.
Okay. And he has all the mitigation planting.
So I'll make a motion to discuss. To approve is discussed.
Carlo Hawk, second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. There's no further comments. Going to go for the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
And I.
It is unanimous. We have an order of conditions. And folks, that's all we have.
I'll second Maury's motion to adjourn.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adjourn. Betsy,
Reluctantly, Gladfelter, aye.
Right.
sure. Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, not so reluctantly, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Aye.
Steve.
And I.
Is unanimous. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Tom,
Thank you.